Jack Dorsey spent $68 million on a company party, and 5 months later, he fired over 4,000 people and blamed AI. His stock surged 24%, and he's not alone. Mark Benioff cut Salesforce's support team from 9,000 to 5,000 employees and said he needs less heads. Amazon cut 30,000 corporate roles. In January 2026 alone, over 100,000 job cuts across the board, the worst January since 2009. But when researchers tested what AI agents do on real-world freelance work, the top agent's completion rate was 2.5%, not 25%, not 10%, 2.5%. So if AI completes 2.5% of real-world tasks, why are hundreds of thousands of people losing their jobs? Who's benefiting from these cuts? And what happens to the 22-year-old who was supposed to get hired this year? The answer isn't robots took your job. It's worse. If you want the real story behind AI headlines, not the hype, not the panic, the actual data, subscribe and hit the bell. A Bloat data scientist was offered a 90% raise to stay. She'd watched half of her colleagues get fired the day before. She quit anyway. We'll get to her story. But first, you need to understand how Bloat ballooned to nearly 13,000 employees and then cut back to roughly 6,000. Because this story explains everything happening in tech right now. During the pandemic, consumer spending shifted online. Remote work exploded. Companies built for a future where the growth curve kept going up forever. Bloat peaked at nearly 13,000 employees in 2024. Aaron Zamost, might get his last name wrong, Bloat's former head of communications and people from 2015 to 2020, wrote in a New York Times op-ed that Bloat had gone through rounds of layoffs in 2024, 2025, and again in February. He called it predictable fallout from earlier executive turf wars that led to teams being duplicated all over the org. So how did every tech company end up in the same mess? Enter ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. From 2020 to 2022, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates near zero. Borrowing was almost free, so companies hired like crazy. Not because they needed the people, but because money was so cheap. Why not? Then the Fed raised rates. All those hires became expensive liabilities. Growth projections turned out to be wrong. 2022 through 2024, a wave of tech layoffs followed, and companies framed it honestly. We overhired. But then the story changed. Same correction, new excuse. The word AI started appearing in every layoff announcement. Challenger, Gray, and Christmas first tracked AI as a reason for job cuts in 2023. But in the first 2 years of tracking, AI was cited for about 17,000 job cuts total. In 2025 alone, about 54,000. But in January 2026, AI was cited for only 7,000 cuts, 7% of the month's total. Andy Challenger, the firm's chief revenue officer, said Amazon's 16,000 cuts appear to be due more to overhiring and reducing layers than to the new technology. Employment in computer science has declined only 5% total since ChatGPT launched. The displacement doesn't match the rhetoric. So who else is telling this story? Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff on the Logan Bartlett show in August 2025 said, "I've reduced our team from 9,000 heads to about 5,000 because I need less heads," the customer support division alone. Weeks earlier at the AI for Good Summit, he'd said AI was a radical augmentation of the workforce. Fortune described this as a change of tune. Amazon CEO Andy Jassy in a June 2025 memo said, "We will need fewer people doing some of the jobs that are being done today." Challenger attributed Amazon's cuts to overhiring and reducing layers. And then, March 5th, 2026, Benioff goes on CNBC. A reporter asks him about Bloat's layoffs, and he answers, "Obviously, that company has its own unique issues, we all know that. These pronouncements of these mass white-collar layoffs, I just do not see it." The man who cut 4,000 support jobs and bragged about needing less heads is now saying he does not see mass tech layoffs happening. Think about it. Here's the simplest way to understand this. Imagine your parents gave you a credit card with 0% interest. So you sign up for every subscription, every streaming service, every single app. But then the interest rate jumps to 20%. Do you blame Netflix for existing? No, you signed up for too much when borrowing was free, when money was cheap. These companies went on a hiring spree on a 0% interest credit card. But now the rate went up, and now they're blaming AI instead of just admitting they overspent. Now, I sold my tech startup as founder and CEO to a big tech company with thousands of employees, and I can guarantee most of my work was not stuff that's easily automatable. It's a lot of meetings, bureaucracy, negotiation, communication, alignment, and complex coordination among multiple teams. The idea of AI making me 10x more productive in that context is incredibly hard to believe. It doesn't match the reality of mid-size or enterprise work. The reality here is these companies overhired and they knew it. But then something changed. They discovered that mentioning AI in the layoff announcement did something extraordinary to their stock price. 5 months before firing 4,000 employees, Block spent $68 million on a company-wide party. The stock fell more than 14%. Then on February 26, 2026, Jack Dorsey posted on Twitter, "Today we're making one of the hardest decisions in the history of our company, over 4,000 people gone." His CFO said the cuts came at a time when our business is accelerating, with quarterly gross profit at $2.87 billion, up 24% year over year. After that announcement, their stock surged over 24%. So they spent $68 million on a party, stock crashed, fired 4,000 people, blamed AI, then the stock surged 24%. That is the new playbook. But why did investors celebrate? A former Block employee asked this question directly in his New York Times op-ed. Is AI a terrifying new reality in which the work we do might no longer be viable? Or is Block's announcement a convenient and flashy new cover for typical corporate downsizing? Then he described the mechanism, and this part should chill you. He said, reduce a team from 10 to 1, and that remaining person has no choice but to adopt AI tools to absorb the work of the 9 others. This increases AI use, and suddenly the rationale creates conditions that make it self-reinforcing. In other words, the layoffs create the AI adoption, which justifies the layoffs. It's a loop. Takeda was another Block employee. She was a data scientist on the Cash app. She quit one day after the layoffs. She made a viral LinkedIn post where she said, "I saw my company discard half of my peers and double my pay. That's not an honor. It feels shameful and dehumanizing." On AI at Block, Takeda wrote, "In the last year, AI was shoved down everyone's throats." One analyst told the Wall Street Journal the vast majority of these cuts were probably not due to AI. And former Block employee Jason Karsh put it even blunter. This isn't an AI story, it's organizational bloat wearing an AI costume. Yet Wall Street gave Block a 24% bump for firing 4,000 people. So now every CEO in America is going to look at the same numbers and think, what percentage of people do I have to fire to get my stock bump? For the rest of 2026, layoffs may be about the reward. But here's what happens when the story works too well. Every CEO starts telling it, and the people getting fired, they start believing it too. They think they've been replaced by a machine, even though the data says something very different. If this is making you look at those layoff headlines differently, hit the like button. And I want to hear from you. Have you been laid off in the last year? Did your company mention AI? Drop it in the comments. A Block engineer was hired to build AI tools. Weeks later, AI was the reason they fired her. What does getting laid off look like in 2026? Enter Debbie O'Brien. She was a senior staff developer relations engineer on Block's applied AI team. She was hired weeks earlier to help build AI workflows using Goose, Block's open source AI agent. She even had an AI generated blog post and release video working in 40 minutes. She says on her YouTube, "So are you saying I'm not using AI? I'm totally using AI. Am I being productive? I'm totally being productive." Yet they fired her anyway. Colleagues started messaging in Slack, "I've been cut. I'm gone too. At 12:30 a.m., she found the DocuSign termination, her second layoff in months after Microsoft. Then there's Becky, also on YouTube. Former Amazon L7 manager, worked 7 years there. 3 of her former coworkers got laid off, 2 of them on H-1B visas, all 3 with mortgages. But she wasn't surprised. She'd quit the year before because she saw it coming. She says, "This was written on the wall long before ChatGPT." As the manager who owned Amazon's annual planning for her org, she watched revenue per employee collapse. $484,000 in 2020, $362,000 in 2021, $320,000 in 2022. Everyone was asking for headcount, sometimes for things that made no sense. For example, needing 6 product managers to find UX issues on one checkout page. Almost everything got approved. Having lived through this overhiring cycle, her verdict is AI is the cover story. It's much better to say in front of the board we're investing heavily in AI versus admitting, oops, we overhired, and let politics hollow the org out. And then there's a 25-year tech veteran who goes by Asian Dad Energy on YouTube. When he heard the layoff list was coming, he discovered junior engineers were on it. He put himself on the list instead to save their jobs. He says it was anxiety, panic, excitement, fear, hope, everything. 3 people, 3 companies, same conclusion. This isn't about AI. Stanford researchers found a 16% employment decline for workers aged 22 to 25 in AI-exposed sectors. Job openings hit 6.54 million at the end of December 25, which is the lowest since September 2020. Over 100,000 job cuts in January 2026 alone, lowest hiring in 15 years, and every CEO is blaming AI. But what if AI isn't doing what they say it's doing? The research on this is devastating, and not for the employees. The Center for AI Safety and Scale AI collaborated and tested what AI agents do when given real freelance work. 240 real-world freelance projects. The top-performing AI agent success rate, 2.5%. Not 25%, not even 10%. 2.5%. Yet in 2025, companies cited AI in nearly 55,000 layoff announcements. So who's lying? The CEOs or the data? Even the company building Claude says the robots aren't doing the work yet. Anthropic's own researchers studied 800 plus US occupations. Computer and math jobs have 94% theoretical AI exposure, but only about 33% observed coverage. And in their study, they said no systematic increase in unemployment for highly exposed workers since ChatGPT launched. 94% theoretical, 33% observed. The gap between those numbers is the entire story. One of my favorite comments on Hacker News put it this way: AI speeds up maybe 10% of your work by 10x, roughly 10% more efficient overall, because most of the job is stakeholder management, coordination, and design. Oxford economics director Ben May says we suspect some firms are trying to dress up layoffs as a good news story rather than a bad one by pointing to technological change instead of past overhiring. And then Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, said the quiet part out loud. 1 week before Block's layoffs, he said, at the India AI Impact Summit, there's some AI washing where people are blaming AI for layoffs that they would otherwise do. The CEO of the company that built ChatGPT is telling you companies are using ChatGPT as a cover story. So what do the people who hire and fire say? The recruiters, hiring managers. Hayes surveyed thousands of US employers. 50% use AI tools, but only 4.7 report replacing jobs with AI outright. 4.7%. 48% use AI to support existing teams, augment them, but not cut headcounts. The New York Fed said very few firms reported AI-induced layoffs. AI was more likely to result in retraining than job loss. Resume.org surveyed 1,000 US-based hiring managers and found that nearly 60% of these hiring managers emphasize AI's role in layoffs because it's viewed more favorably than financial constraints. 60%. They're incentivized to spin the story this way. 6 out of 10 hiring managers admit to AI washing. Let it sit. And then there are the companies that tried to replace workers with AI and completely failed, all of them. Commonwealth Bank of Australia fired 45 employees, blamed an AI voice bot. The union investigated, but found call volumes were increasing. The bank admitted in court the roles were not redundant. The union called it an outright lie. Then there's Klarna. They bragged that AI replaced hundreds of agents. The CEO said AI can already do all jobs. By May 2025, cost was rising again and lower quality, so now they're rehiring humans for those roles. Stock went down 67%. Then there's Salesforce. They cut their support staff from 9,000 to 5,000, like I mentioned earlier. I need less heads. 4 months later, Salesforce publicly regrets firing all those people. Their own CTO admitted LLMs start dropping some directives past 8 instructions. Then they cut another 1,000, including agent force team members, the people who are supposed to be building these AI agents. Then there's IBM. Viral headline, 7,800 jobs replaceable by AI. But the reality is their CEO told the Wall Street Journal our total employment has gone up. Then there's Duolingo. The CEO said AI will replace what our employees do. And then 1 week later, he says, I do not see AI as replacing what our employees do. 1 week. Then there's McDonald's. 2.5 years spent testing an AI drive-thru with IBM, who, as I mentioned earlier, totally viral fail. They killed the partnership in the summer of 2024. So all 6 of these companies publicly bragged about AI replacing their employees. All 6 failed in that pursuit. Gartner predicts half of those companies announcing this will rehire by 2027. Takeda, the Bloat data scientist who quit even though she was offered a raise, put it best. I saw very limited gains in productivity from AI, nothing nearly profound enough to justify tossing out half of the company's workforce along with their institutional knowledge and expertise. By the way, this is why I'm so passionate about teaching AI to solopreneurs and tiny teams, not Fortune 500 companies. AI is genuinely transformative to help you scale yourself and achieve time, money, flexibility. But helping big companies squeeze more productivity out of their people, unfortunately, the benefits often don't trickle down to the employees. That's why I share a lot of startup entrepreneur content too. Okay, but here's what makes 2026 different from every other layoff cycle. In 2021, the story was the bubble burst. In 2008, it was the banks collapsed. Those cycles ended. The market recovered. Jobs came back. This time, something structural may have changed, and it's not AI doing the work, it's AI killing the on-ramp. I use Claude Code every day for coding for the past year. I can tell you AI does not replace senior engineers. However, it can replace the junior hire who's going to become the senior engineer. It's the on-ramp that's disappearing. The Dallas Fed found something critical. AI complements tacit knowledge, experience, judgment, relationships, but it displaces codified knowledge, the textbook tasks, the things you can just Google and copy paste, the entry-level type of work. This means the person with 15 years of experience gets more productive with AI, and the person who is going to spend 2 years learning the basics is not getting hired in the current economy. Stanford researchers confirmed this effect. They found a 16% employment decline for workers aged 22 to 25 in AI-exposed sectors, Gen Z. Dallas Fed economists Atkinson and Yamko found the decline is driven by fewer people entering employment, not layoffs of existing workers. Companies aren't firing juniors, they're not hiring them. Challenger recorded over 500,000 planned hires across all industries in 2025. This is down 34% from 2024, but it's the lowest annual total since 2010. Meanwhile, Forrester predicts half of AI-attributed layoffs will be quietly rehired, but offshore or at significantly lower salaries. But wait, here's where everything gets confusing. Citadel Securities macro strategist Frank Flight reported in February 2026, software engineer postings are up 11% year over year. The St. Louis Fed found daily AI use at work is unexpectedly stable. So CEOs are firing thousands and blaming AI, but software engineer postings are rising. How? Because the jobs coming back aren't for everyone. Postings are rising overall, but the Dallas shows a 16% decline for workers aged 22 to 25, that on-ramp. The senior engineers are getting hired, the junior ones are really struggling. Jack Dorsey, CEO of Bloat, said the majority of companies will reach the same conclusion. Hire fewer, hire senior, use AI as a justification. Every previous crash had a bottom. But the question no one wants to answer about this one, where's the bottom when the CEOs don't want to hire even after the economy recovers? If you take 3 things from this video, make it these. Number 1, when a CEO says AI made these roles redundant, read their financials. 60% of hiring managers admit they cite AI because it sounds better than cutting costs. Only 4.7% of employers report replacing jobs with AI. Even Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, calls it AI washing and acknowledges that it's actively happening. When the numbers don't add up, it's an overhiring correction wearing an AI costume. Number 2, the real threat isn't getting fired, it's the on-ramp closing for junior engineers. Software engineer postings are up 11%, but the Dallas Fed shows a 16% decline for Gen Z, age 22 to 25. The jobs are coming back for seniors, but the drawbridge is going up for everyone else. So if you're early career, my honest advice, don't wait for the traditional job market. Build things, make content, ship projects, create proof of work. The companies hiring in 18 months won't care where you went to school. They'll care what you've built. And number 3, it's never been a better time in history to be a solopreneur or entrepreneur. Bloat fired 4,000 people. The CEO got a 24% stock bump for the company. The employees got a DocuSign at midnight. Inside big companies, AI gains go to shareholders, not the employees. But when you're building your own thing, you keep the majority of the upside. One person with AI tools today can do what took a 10-person team 10 years ago. The WEF projects 78 million net new jobs by 2030. The jobs are coming back. But why wait for a company to give you permission? The same tools they're blaming for firing people are the ones you can use today to build something of your own. So here's the question I keep coming back to. Jack Dorsey said the majority of companies will reach the same conclusion within a year. Is he right? Will every company follow his playbook, fire thousands, blame AI, and collect the stock bump? Or will they be the next Klarna, bragging about AI replacement until reality forces them to rehire the same people they fired? Tell me what you think in the comments, and if this video changed how you see those layoff headlines, hit like, hit subscribe. I do deep dives like this every week on the real stories behind AI. See you in the next one.